filibuster, cloiture, impeachment.
Huh? That's all fake news. Nobody gets that.
Welcome to Attorneys Are Human Too, Season 3, Episode 2, The Realities of the 2024 Election. I'm Steve Wallace.
I'm Selena Music.
We have a real treat today. We have my very, very dear friend for over 20 years, the Prince of Palm Beach County, Dr. Andre Fladell, and we're also joined by our engineer, Judge Janine.
Hola!
Welcome, Andre. It's so good to see you. I think the last time our audience saw you, we were locked down in a global pandemic.
We were also predicting the hurricanes in the Gulf of Mexico, which were going to hit this year, specifically where they hit.
And all your predictions were accurate.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
It is very, very scary. So we're here today to discuss the realities of the 2024 election. And I'd like to start to ask you, what was the first political campaign you worked on?
The first major campaign I worked on was for a candidate that was running for president. And his name was Robert Kennedy. And
Not to be confused with Junior, correct?
No, not to be confused with Junior, although they both eat from McDonald's, I'm sure. That he was doing well in the polls. We were first getting in good results. And while he was speaking in the lobby of a hotel, they shot him and killed him. So that was my first campaign experience.
And do you think it's gotten any more difficult since your first campaign?
Yeah, now they shoot you in the ear instead of the head. I guess the aim of the snipers are different. But they started by being more accurate with their assassination attempts.
What did you think going into this election that, I guess what I'm trying to say is how did you project this going with Trump? You know, there's many people who said, well, if Trump wins or if he doesn't win, there's going to be a riot. And if he does win, did you think that was going to happen?
What they actually said was if he did win, it would be the end of democracy as we know it.
Correct.
And if he didn't win, there's going to be all kinds of an uprising. The truth is neither was going to happen and neither will happen because we've been through this film. We saw part one. This is now part two. Democracy didn't end as we know it. And the riot was a mini riot, not well constructed, but I don't remember a lot of weapons and guns trying to overthrow a government. I remember guys with horns and Viking hats, people with cell phones who wanted to take selfies, and probably about 50 to 100 people who were there for the wrong reasons and about 500 who were there for the entertainment and got caught up in the moment. So I neither think there would have been riots other than short term, nor do I think there would have been an end to the country.
So we mentioned it tangentially. Let's talk a little bit more about the assassination attempt. When the assassination attempt occurred, I knew there's no way in bleep, bleep, bleep that Trump was going to lose. Now, some people say, and we love conspiracy theories on Attorneys Are Human Too. Do you believe or any thoughts that assassination attempt may have been staged to increase interest in the Trump campaign?
Do you think it was fake news?
I don't think that 4 people can keep a secret. So in order for that to have occurred, you'd have to have, with minimum 50 to 100 people keeping a secret. The way the country's situation and the way people's nature is, anything that would have taken that much coordination and that many people involved, the secret would not be a secret, and you'd know the details and the facts. There are no secrets left between groups of people. There's only secret between 2 individuals who are father and son, who are mother and daughter, who are committed for life to trusting each other. You can't name 5 people would hold your secrets. 100 people wouldn't keep this. So it wasn't a conspiracy, number one. Number two, shooting him in the ear would be a bit close to prove a point. They could have picked an easier target. And number 5, there were so many parts that would have had to fall together that don't work. So these things are not conspiracies. They were ill-planned, ill-fated, bad moments.
So what was up with that tampon on the ear after the shooting?
That's all image crap. It looks good. He wanted he proved his point. And again, I'm not the doctor at that time on that case, but I'm assuming if I had a cut, I would cover it with something. So it seemed to be the least invasive.
I have to tell you, those T-shirts after the assassination, they got me really fired up. I have to tell you, that was a great shot. So that's what led to some credence to.
Yeah, well, his reaction was pretty tough.
He in the moment didn't lose his opportunity, and that's the mark of a kid from New York, from the streets of Queens. A lot of what he says and does are more appropriate for a park in Queens. But if you grew up in Brooklyn like I did, I understand why he's sarcastic and why he is defensive and why he's a counterpuncher. A lot of kids who grew up in the streets, it's just normal behavior for us.
Yeah, it's common language, I think, in New York. I think we're a little bit tougher as well. I think we use a lot of street language, like you said, and I think it's a common thing.
It's also good to raise your fist and be tough when you have 24 people around you on all sides putting you into a limousine. It's not as hard as when the guy's got a gun at your head still.
Yeah.
That is absolutely true. So let's delve a little bit into some of the issues, and I know that you have some very, very minute, very precise analysis of what happened. And so, let's just start discussing some of the issues, some of the reasons why all of the predictions were wrong. They said it was going to be a close election, and by midnight, we knew what was going to happen.
When Biden drops out, which is where we should pick this up, because Biden was clearly not all there all the time, and he was going downhill, and as well-intentioned as it was, he wasn't going to be a successful situation. They then come and they anoint who will be the successor. Logical. When that occurs, if you look at the reaction, the polls, good, bad, or indifferent, have her spiking everywhere and winning all around in all the swing states and she's just absolutely annihilating them. So everybody goes in saying this is the new hope, or this is the new future. This is Obama on steroids. This is Hillary Clinton, but the better version. The females are happy because
she still wore pantsuits, though.
That's fine. The females were happy. It's a female character. The minorities were happy. It's minority character. The Democrats were happy because she's articulate and she was happy and upbeat. Trump goes into a very negative defensive mode and starts becoming the unhappy candidate. Before that, Trump was the jabber and Biden was the target. Now Trump becomes the target. She becomes the jabber. And this election is set up for her to win it. She then proceeds as a campaign and an individual to do a series of probably a dozen things, each one more damaging than the other, taking her support base and annihilating it and shredding it and dissembling it, making bad decision after bad decision. The people who ran a campaign didn't really understand the race they were in. They were living in some race that didn't exist. They were too inside. They weren't street people. They didn't understand what we do on the ground. And they ran the campaign as if they were ivory tower people, speaking to a select group of loud noise, having no idea what the street was looking at. And they made a series of absolute disastrous mistakes. And the numbers immediately went from her overwhelmingly, and I say overwhelmingly, she was a 53 to 47 point winner. And that went back to even, and he didn't rise. She kept going down. He only came up at the end.
So what was the street looking for, which ultimately led to 45 being 47?
And just to piggyback on Stephen's question is, do you think that her being a female minority is what made her lose this race?
No.
Because people think that.
Her being a female minority is why she did so good. She actually did better than most people because she had these support bases that wanted her, and she alienated each one of her own support bases with her own lack of understanding of who and what she was talking to. A black male in the urban areas wanted someone that would talk to them. She never spoke to him. She never paid attention to him. And clearly, Oprah was not the one who was going to speak to him. And when she put out her support-based speakers, whether it was Whoopi Goldberg or Usher, as much as we like them, they weren't speaking to this black male population from urban core. She neither spoke to them or females who were white rural females because she couldn't figure out who exactly she was or where she fit. And she was somewhere in the middle in a unique category that didn't exist, which is a sophisticated kind of not black, kind of not white female with this educated, sophisticated background. She couldn't bring out her children because she didn't have any. She didn't bring out a marriage because it didn't appear that whatever it was, it wasn't. So she wasn't communicating. People who vote are 5 types. Strong Democrat, weak, strong Republican. They weren't going to move either way. You have the weak Democrats.
And what percentage would that be?
If I was picking rough numbers, 20% of the country is on both ends and couldn't care less who you bring.
So the 60%'s in play then.
40%. Then you have another 20% and 20% that are weak on both sides. And you can move a little bit. But the 10% of the middle that's undecided, they're not undecided. When you spend $1 billion before the $1.5 billion and you spend 500 million, they know Trump and they know her. They knew everything they could possibly know. So when you say they're undecided, no, they've made a very clear decision. I don't like him and I don't like her. He's a narcissist, lunatic that says things that are unacceptable. And she doesn't relate to anything I even understand. I don't know what world she lives in, and she's not giving me answers to any questions. So I'm stuck between 2 people I don't particularly care for, and those are the only 2 choices I have. As the race goes on, she makes critical errors like this. Would you have done anything different than Biden? And her answer was the dumbest, most ignorant answer possible. Nothing comes to mind. The amount of answers that she could and should have given healthy without hurting anyone. If I was president, I might have done this different. Looking back in retrospect, I could have done this different. Perhaps I didn't agree with all the policies, but instead she said nothing comes to mind. That was an unacceptable answer to a country. At some point they said, and she was involved with, the border is not a crisis. It's been managed. The border is a crisis. If you think it, or anyone thought it wasn't, it's the wrong answer. When they try to pin the border problem currently on Trump, all the public knew is that Trump said, build the wall, Mexico will pay for it.
Right.
And when he left office, they changed whatever their executive orders were. The average people in the country, not the left and not the right, the middle understood this. The worst mistake she made was she was dismissive of something called inflation. The reason she was dismissive is because she relied on internal numbers which said that the number of inflation had gone from 9.5% to 2.5 or 3%, which is true. The problem is a woman or a man who walks into a grocery store buying a bag of potato chips for $4.59, and a person who goes into the store is buying a loaf of bread for $3.50 and $4 instead of $1, doesn't want to hear you tell them.
Milk is like $5, so it's crazy.
Well, it's like $7.
Right.
Okay.
Well, that shows
That's your fancy organic stuff.
you could have run for
And I
president.
have a baby.
Yes. Yeah.
You could have run for president too, and they wouldn't have believed you either. But believe me when I tell you, Weiss's potato chips are $4.59 to the second. And the point is, these were $2.89 and $2.79. So when you tell people inflation is under control and you're dismissive, as they shop every day, they're offended. When you tell them that their life is okay because things are better now with the economy, it may be better mechanically in theoretical number, but when you're paying for energy and you're paying for gas and you're paying for home insurance and you're paying for car insurance, they weren't feeling, and you weren't feeling their pain. You shouldn't even relate to their pain. So all those were critical errors, each one costing votes. When you tell people that Joe Biden was mentally unfit, people saw it, and they might not like it, but they saw it. When you say Trump is unfit, it's one thing to say he's out in the fringe or he's a narcissist. When you say he's incapable, every day he proved that he could talk as fast and as quick and he could have his counter jabs. And whether you like him or not, you couldn't sell that he was incapable. You may not agree with him. So then when that all didn't work, they decided we have a better idea. He's an Islamophobic, he's a homophobic, he's a racist, he's a sexist, he's a misogynist, he's a felon, he's a liar, he's a fascist, he's a thief. And you know when you call somebody enough names, you know what it starts sounding like? He's an ist, he's an ist, and
Yes.
he's an ist, and he's an ism. And when you say, if they would have said that here's the problem with Trump, and they identify something, but they identified so many things in so many directions that it didn't matter what they said and what they didn't, because the whole thing started getting, so the undecided middle, that 10%, they made a choice. Trump said to them, drill, baby, drill. Trump said to them, deport everybody who we're paying for. We don't want to pay for them. Trump said, stop the war. And she said, he's an Islamophobe, he's a homophobe, he's a fascist. And they said, you know what? I'd rather end the war, I'd rather close the borders, and I'd rather bring the cost of food down. So the 10% undecided who aren't undecided, they hate the system, they hate the candidates, they know the government does nothing for them. They like the person that says the government stinks because they think the government stinks. So Trump running saying the government was falling apart was the better message than someone running saying everything's okay. If it's tough now, just you'll get over it. So her messaging was wrong. How she defined herself was wrong. How she defined him was overboard and kill. And the things about not distancing from Biden was wrong. When she ran for president, if you recall, she polled at 2.5%. So she wasn't a popular character. She started higher and gradually went down. When she was asked questions, her answers were even more phenomenal. We care, they don't. We can, they can't. Tomorrow is better than yesterday. And people are going, great, but what are you talking about?
What are you going to do?
Yeah.
And all they wanted to hear is something. I'm paying this amount for a loaf of bread. I'm paying this amount for car insurance. Just give me something. And what she gave him was, we're happy, they're not, and he's going to destroy the country. And at some point, this middle and the numbers continually caught him up. He didn't win the race. She gave it to him. She handed it to him. The other thing to know is that major issues like abortion, those numbers were baked in before that before the middle started moving. People that were strong on life were strong on abortion positions either way, choice. They weren't the undecided middle. They were either on the left or they were voting for her.
The 20 on each side.
It's probably I go 40 on each side. Those numbers weren't moving. Those who were Roe v. Wade, they're one party. Those who are not, they're another party. This 10% in the middle, that wasn't their issue. And that's what's interesting. Their issue was they had made up their mind based on the abortion issue. The border crisis, they had made. You can't be undecided because they had all that information.
Right, especially the states that are bordering the Mexico or Canada.
They were already baked in. So this undecided number, which is, and here's why it's fascinating. You had Arizona, Nevada, or New Mexico. You had Wisconsin and Michigan, who have nothing to do with Pennsylvania. You would think fracking was an issue. You would think it was industrial production in Michigan and workers. You would think it's
Canada.
All these had different complete, yet every single one of these swing states moved exactly in the same direction at the same time, yet each one had different thoughts, different parts of the country with different values. Abortion didn't move them. The border didn't move them. They just didn't like what they heard and what they were being sold from a lady that wasn't talking to them. Had she picked Josh Shapiro as her vice president, I think the outcome would have been dramatically different because Waltz, who was a very charming character, seemed to be having, to me, was a kind of like a circus clown effect.
He was, for sure.
Yeah.
Like a Saturday Night Live parody.
He was a very nice guy and probably would have
great parody on
He would have been a good vice president for Jimmy Carter in those years. But he wasn't the 21st century any more than J.D. Vance was a great pick. I would have gone with Ray Cooper, not saying who won and who lost. I think he would have added more. I think she didn't pick Josh Shapiro, and my belief is that because he was a Jew and she thought it wouldn't help her in some of the northern states, I think he's one of the greatest speakers in our country today. I think he would have motivated people. I think he would have connected. Waltz connected with people that really weren't in the middle. He connected with whoever she had or didn't have. So I think these are all critical decisions which costed campaigns. These are not casual things. And remember, all elections in this country are decided by 8% of the population that doesn't like the system. And whoever, when you go back and look at George Bush and nobody liked him and they picked John Kerry, who they like less. They like John McCain less. They like Bob Dole less. If you look at why presidents won, it's not lately because they like people more, because people dislike people who they dislike least.
Yeah, when I was at the polls, I was sitting there and I was frustrated and couldn't make a decision. Obviously, my decision will remain with me, but ultimately, it's a very difficult challenge. You would think out of all the candidates, there would be two candidates that people like. So just to follow up on that, we talked a lot about what the Democratic candidate did wrong. Can you highlight a little bit more about what President-elect Trump did right?
Yeah, and do you think J.D. Vance was a good pick for Trump?
J.D. Vance, in the end didn't hurt him but didn't do anything for him. J.D. Vance,
I like his beard.
It helped his base be stronger, but those votes didn't move to him. It didn't move the middle. What he did with J.D. Vance was he didn't lose his base. It didn't help, it didn't hurt, but it wasn't negative. What the Democrats or Kamala did was she hurt herself with her pick by not strengthening anything. But let's just go further. He spoke about lowering gas prices, and the expression was drill, baby, drill. Well, drill, baby, drill, that middle that doesn't like the world, they understand drill, baby, drill. They may not know the economics of a barrel of oil and whether it's fracking and shale and the cost of, but they understood build the wall, drill, baby, drill. When he says deport the illegals, they understand there are people in this country, good, bad, or indifferent, that are costing them money. Yeah. And they're costing them money for their children's education, for teaching them English, for giving them health care, for housing them. And people who are middle-class working, two-family families are resentful. I don't care how much they pretend we're kind-hearted. They are resentful of the fact that their hard money is being taken from them for people that they think they don't have an obligation to. So that was good. When he said, and the Republican group said, make them show that they're legal, make them show their ID before they vote. And the other party says not necessary. That middle moves. The 40% on the left and right don't care because they believe you need to show it or it's voter suppression. Mm-hmm. The 10% in the middle, they want citizens voting. They don't like anything going on. They don't trust anything.
Right. They think that without an ID, it's fraud.
So when he says have tariffs on China, it doesn't matter if it helps or doesn't help economically. These aren't economists. These aren't, Alan Greenspan people.
Right.
And these are people who go, screw China. We want everything, even if it's not a good thought, all they want is to pro-American, anti-China.
My 9-year-old always asks me, why is everything you buy me made in China? I said, well, we can afford it if it's made in China. If it's made in the U.S., it's going to be a lot more expensive.
Pricey.
The best part, it's not even made in China. It's made in Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, and Africa. And China just puts it together at the end product and puts their label on it because Chinese labor is too expensive.
Yeah, and at times India.
So listen to what you're
and
saying.
Pakistan.
One guy says, I'll end this war within 2 weeks. No more American kids got to die. I can solve the problems. One guy says, I'm lowering gas prices. One guy says that I'm going to lower the cost of your food. One guy says, I'm going to deport all the people illegal. And the other person says, everything's okay. We took care of the border. We took care of your inflation. And the undecided 10% in the middle, day by day, hour by hour. Now, if you want to know brilliant moves that may have not made the difference, but at the end got momentum, him in the garbage truck and him at McDonald's. Who is he? The 40%, 80% of the population saw McDonald's, left, and didn't care one way or the other. That 8%, we know what they care about. They want to see you hug your child. They want to see the father. They want to see something that gives them something they can relate to. Him in the McDonald's window. Hey, one of us worked in McDonald's for a day. Him in the garbage truck. These were classically brilliant ideas. Mm-hmm. This is where a campaign gets brilliant. And you say, well, it doesn't matter. No, it made the unhappy people smile.
We remember it. We all remember it. No matter if you like it, dislike it, believe it, not believe it.
You ate there.
So if you want to know what makes these elections, the issue of the 2026 election doesn't exist till 4 weeks before the election. Everyone said the issue is going to be the Ukraine. It wasn't. And the issue is going to be Israel and the Middle East. It wasn't. If you take a look at what's going to be the issues, the issues of the elections were human nature, likability, and simplicity of message. It was someone feeling that if he's in this office, I think I'll be better. If she's in this office, I'm not quite so sure. I'm tired of listening to what's out of his mouth. It's boring. It's dull. I don't know that I like him that much, but I think I'll be better off. I kind of like her, but I don't think she's going to do anything for me. It had nothing to do with female and nothing to do with gender. It had nothing to do with race because what she lost were females and African Americans. They deserted her. It wasn't the other way around. They voted more for Biden than they did for her statistically. In Illinois and New Jersey, he was within 4 and 5% in urban core places. She should have wiped them out.
Wow.
They were in 5% and 4%. So this campaign was poorly thought. The woke movement is a whole nother issue. But the woke movement doesn't move the middle.
I don't even understand what that means, but let alone
What they've defined it into meaning is politically correct, number one. And somehow they've wrapped around it this transgender binary male.
I don't
female.
even understand any of that either, but but that's for another episode.
See, when I'm kind of an old person, so I grew up and on my birth certificate said male or female, and then when I got driver's license, male or female, and now when you have an application, there's lots of categories.
There's other.
Yeah, I don't even understand what any of those questions are, but that again is for another episode.
Well, unfortunately, I became a doctor, and in school they didn't teach us a lot of categories for that.
I have a doctorate, but not the useful one like you have.
Correct.
Well, let me ask you a question, because a lot of people say to us, well, now we have a president who's only going to make and focus on making the wealthy wealthier and doesn't care about the impoverished. And we have a White House now full of billionaires.
Well, I love that, and I think that's so great. Let me tell you what they say now, and we'll just go on. Tulsi Gabbard is going to give away the national secrets and leak them because she has an affection for Putin. That was said on CNN specifically. They said that Trump doesn't care about solving anybody's problems. He only cares about himself. That was said on CNN. They said that Headsworth is a racist because he believes that promotion should be on merit, not by DEI. What they've said about each and every person he picked is, and what they're saying is like you're saying about Trump. So let's say Trump only cares about the billionaires. I can only say I don't know what he cares about, but I know that the numbers of unemployment for minorities when he was president seems to be contradictory.
I remember that.
The way people felt about their economy and the way they felt about their personal life seemed to be different. The way he tried to drop crime in tough neighborhoods seemed to say something different. Now, Ronald Reagan, who they remember with great fondness, said trickle-down economics. That means, in English, if the corporations do well, they hire more, money flows better, and people do well. So I'm going to ask this question. Let's say that he believes the rich people should do better. Let's just go with that argument. And the stock market's now 43,000, and Bitcoin's 91,000, and the S&P is at 5,900.
I love Bitcoin, by the way.
And the Russell 2000 is at 2,400. Let's just say, and it is. That means that every pension, every IRA of every teacher, police officer, firefighter, and they all have these pensions, and all their pensions are fat and rich. All these people working in all these jobs are not being fired. You know why they're not being fired? Because when these stocks and companies are making more money, they're expanding their investments. They're expanding their workforce. The reason the labor unions, for the first time, went to Trump in larger numbers than they have ever done before is because if that were true, the middle and the bottom are not suffering by it. And I don't believe in trickle down in the general terms, but I do believe this. If the companies did bad in the last recession of the housing recession, and we remember it, unemployment went to what percent? Well, let me help you out. 10, 11, and 12, and people had no money and their houses were in foreclosure. So you're telling—
Those were good days, at least for the Wallace Law Group, but—
It helps us.
And I appreciate you're in what you're in.
Right.
So let's say that if you believe that you can separate one group from another when it comes to the wealth of a nation. So we say billionaires because it's somehow a bad word. The billionaire of today was a millionaire of 20 years ago. They just
Yes.
have a bigger number. But everybody who's making a living, cops, firefighters, so they're making not enough money and they should make more, and they're only making $80,000 or $70,000 or $90,000 a year. That would have been $40,000 25 years ago. So I don't believe that one makes money and the other doesn't. I think there'll always be a rich— we're in a capitalistic, mobile society. There's always going to be the wealthy. The wealthy proportionally are not so much different than they ever were before. The problem is the social programs of the country are bleeding the country dry. And the social programs are bleeding the country dry because they were conceived in 1932 when the life expectancy was 68.4. So you had 45 years of people supporting 3 years of people who are going to die, who are retired. Life expectancy being 78, now you have 13 years of people being supported by the same 45. So the ratio of people working people they're supporting is 1 to 3 instead of 1 to 15. There's a lot of other numbers that are working within the welfare system, who pays and who benefits. The numbers are so disproportional at this point that the country can't afford to maintain them, but nobody has the courage to discuss it. So when you say, is Trump only for billionaires? I think Trump, because of his ego and because of the things he's publicly stated, is committed to achieving each of the things he stated. When he gets Ramaswamy and he gets Elon Musk to be his efficiency czars, they're going to cut this government. They're going to cut it bigger than anybody's ever imagined. And they don't care. Only someone as intellectually brilliant and economically smart and as wealthy as these two have the ability to make cuts of that magnitude with no repercussions. When he had Wilbur Ross as the head of Secretary of Commerce, Wilbur Ross is a billionaire. He was brilliant. He did it brilliantly. If you look at his past appointments, not his future and his next, the people did remarkably good jobs within what categories he picked them. The question is, will these people be as equally committed? My belief is that people who are successful with that kind of money, what they want to prove is that they can do something right. I think they have egos like everyone else. I don't think they want to be on a public stage and
ultra competitive as well.
They don't want to be publicly humiliated. And I believe the country right now has the potential to be in good hands. And the Democratic Party, of which I'm a registered Democrat my entire life, and for those who may remember, I am the plaintiff who filed the lawsuit in the year 2000 to stop the presidential election, the butterfly ballot, the hanging chads.
Could you elaborate a little bit on that?
In the election of Al Gore versus George W. Bush, I detected there was something wrong with the ballot. I am the individual who filed the lawsuit that stopped the presidential election at that time in the Supreme Court of the United States. I was the one on Crossfire and Jake Tapper and Tucker Carlson and Geraldo and Larry King and Good Morning. And so it's not that I'm a Republican. It's not that I didn't grow up all my life as a JFK Democrat. But the Democratic Party that exists that a week ago said that they're going to form the resistance to the presidency and they're going to form the resistance to that's not the party I signed up for. I signed up for a party that runs good elections, elects good people, and then supports the United States of America, not a party that elects people that are out in left field and then resents whoever wins and are going to undermine the government.
I mean, I tell my kids this, how whatever political belief I have, I'm rooting for whoever the president is, whoever's in Congress, because, again, it benefits us. I'm never one. Elections have consequences. And you win, you lose, but ultimately we have to support the winner because that's how we're all going to benefit.
You and I perfectly agree. I think that this election went the way the ones who did the right thing won. In the 2000 election, the Democrats, of which I was in the middle of, said that the Republicans stole the election. They didn't steal it. They just outplayed the Democrats in the end game. I was on the losing team. In some elections, the Democrats outplay the Republicans, like the one where they did the harvesting of votes in the last election against Trump. They didn't steal it from Trump. They beat him by being smarter in the field. If you recall, the legislatures in the states had a chance to stop and change the process under their own state constitutions. They didn't because they never thought it would be that successful. When they went to court after the election, the court said, you had an option to change it before the election. We're not going to let you go back and change it after. They outplayed them. In this election, the Democrats made critical calculations. They ran bad messaging, bad communication, had no idea. I think Beyonce is great, but she didn't relate to the urban bottom or the rural female.
Taylor Swift appealed to my 9-year-old girl. Unfortunately, she's not a voter.
I love Tay.
I think Taylor Swift is phenomenal, and I think if she endorsed somebody in 20 years, it'll be like the computers. When computers got involved with elections, and Howard Dean was the first, if you all recall, in New Hampshire, and it went flat after that, it's because the only people on computers, aside from people under 30, were older people who were watching their children on Facebook.
Yep.
Now those 30-year-olds are 50, and now computing messages are very valuable. Taylor Swift will be a player. She's just not a player in the voters that are undecided at the moment.
I think the problem is, too, they're choosing these ultra celebrities who have so much money, and instead of maybe finding someone who is like me and you, to speak to the masses, a middle class person that is struggling to stay middle class. And I think that's something people would relate to more than, as much as I love Taylor Swift, Taylor Swift. It's hard.
I don't want George Clooney to tell me who to vote for. That doesn't work for me.
But he's so good looking.
He is pretty good looking.
No, way the best.
Yeah.
But again, what does the middle? How's the middle react? The middle reacts to someone who comes off a battlefield with the Bronze Star.
Yes.
Who's got one finger blown off or whatever's wrong with him, who sits up there and explains why this is for him. The middle comes to someone that's been successful building a business that they've seen building a business.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't come to, I mean, I love Madonna, but Madonna's not making anybody vote differently. I mean, she may
What is up with her?
I don't know. She's pulled her face too much.
So, exactly. So I don't think that their choice, I mean, Lizzo.
We love celebrity gossip. Here,
Lizzo
by the
may
way.
be a nice character. But
I don't even know who Lizzo is, but
well, that's
that's part of the problem.
You are with
that's part of the problem.
Who would have been your Democratic pick for president if you had to choose one that you think could have beat Trump?
I don't know. I'd have to give that a lot of thought. But I will tell you that who I think the Josh Shapiro speaking capability. If Josh Shapiro weren't Jewish, there wouldn't have been a better candidate in the country. Ray Cooper would have been more likable than people suspect. But again, he's a Republican. It's got to be someone that relates to the population. The Mario Cuomo's are so plastic and fake, nobody cares.
What about female? I mean, I did like
know.
Nikki. I did like Nikki. I wish Trump would have chosen her to be his vice president.
Great choice. I'm a Nikki Haley fan. I think Nikki Haley, but I was a fan of hers to be president 5 years ago more than even now. Trump called her a bird brain and disqualified her by his own comment because he basically, I think, would have taken her had he not called her a bird brain, and it would have posed a problem to the way he believes in loyalty. He's also very sarcastic. He's like everybody in the street. He's like real people. He says things that are rude. He's got an attitude. He related to this 10% who don't like anything because they're all like him. But
I don't like a lot of things either. I'm not going to lie to you.
You're grumpy.
I am kind of
more
grumpy.
than that. If I said to you, do you think the government really does its best? You don't believe it. Do you think the government's efficient? You don't believe it. You think the government's straightforward with you? You don't believe it. Can you get?
I don't.
Oh,
trust
that sounds like me.
I don't trust the government. That's how we make some of our money, is not trusting what's in front of us.
There's a joke that the government keeps prostitution illegal because they want to be the only one that screws people and takes their money at the same time.
Okay.
It's a monopoly.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think that they were very, very efficient as a party this time, taking the center, finding the people who were unhappy like they were, and it wasn't a name-calling thing. Trump called names, but the messaging of the party was clever. So that's, that's what I think the whole election came down to.
Okay, well, as we wind down, we're going to ask a couple questions, and Selena's going to take us home with our rapid-fire questions, and then we're going to get a couple rulings from Judge Janine out there, because I know we haven't heard from her yet. So just a couple more questions, then we'll go to our rapid-fire round. Who would you say, and my understanding is that you've been involved in politics for a quarter century.
Actually, 50 years.
Okay. Sorry, a half a century.
Correct.
If luckily I'm a lawyer, not a mathematician.
Correct.
So based on that, who would you say is it doesn't have to necessarily be one, but your top 2 or 3 favorite politicians in history?
Thomas Jefferson.
And why?
He went and wanted everything back to the states for states' rights. I kind of like that. I got a kick when he wouldn't let Washington be buried in the White House where he wanted to be buried. I got a kick out of that. He was responsible for the Capitol being where it is, near Virginia. I kind of like that. He was critical to the creation of We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. They're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, among them life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I think what he had to say about creating the country was just brilliantly magnificent continually. I think that his presidency was excellent. I just think he's one of the great Americans in the history of this country. I think that Abraham Lincoln, in his own little way, was a remarkable character when you learn more about him. Clearly, he should have taken off his hat in the movie theater. He must have annoyed somebody in Ford Theater that night. But when you start to look at what people say and how they put the message out and how they made you feel as a country. So I think these are really incredible characters.
And then just the counter to that, who would you say is your least favorite politician
and why?
And why?
My least favorites would be probably Harry Truman, probably Richard Nixon would be two of my least favorites.
And why?
And John Adams would be one. Why? Nixon was just an unhappy, miserable, egocentric, poorly managed individual who just was angry all the time. There was no good feeling about America. Harry Truman had a Secretary of State called Dean Atkinson, and during World War II, they could have avoided a lot of murder of Jews during the war, but they refused to bomb the railroads. There were cases where they wouldn't accept them in trades for money. There's just a lot of things that went on. He took credit for things Franklin Delano Roosevelt should have been given credit for. John Adams was just an angry human being that resented everything and everybody.
But it was a good HBO special.
I didn't see it.
It was pretty good.
Oh, it's pretty good.
You may have a different opinion on him after that.
No, I like Benjamin Franklin kind of people, and I like Jefferson kind of people. I don't know that Adams, other than Abigail, was much of anything. But we'll get to that some other day.
And I have one more question before we close out.
Sure.
Do you foresee this war with Ukraine and Russia ending anytime soon?
What Biden did this morning was make it an intolerable situation. He did something he should never have done. He made it so Trump couldn't solve it quickly by extending the permission to put medium and long range weapons fired into Russia. It's a terrible thing to do as a lame duck president. If you recall, when Obama was a lame duck president, he allowed the United Nations to make the settlement part of Jerusalem no longer legal for Israel. He stopped the veto, if you recall. He also then put sanctions on Russia during his lame duck last weeks, knowing Trump was president. What Biden did in this week was set up a losing situation for the United States. People will die because of it. It's a critical classical error geared to hurt Trump's ability to negotiate an end to the war. The war to the Ukraine didn't have to happen. The war in the Ukraine, had Ukraine not gone into NATO and remained neutral as per the agreement when the breakup of the Soviet Union occurred, had the Ukraine stayed the way it was, everybody was happy with the circumstance. Nobody was looking to change things. When they said they wanted to join NATO and Putin said that can't happen, I'm not going to allow you to have weapons in my belly any more than you would put me in Cuba. And that wasn't the agreement of our breakup. And Biden said, we'll do whatever we want. He basically dared Putin and Putin dared Biden. And in this guessing chess match, people died because of it. Trump probably, if I was guessing, would simply give Russia access to the Black Sea and give them a sudden way to get to Odessa or to utilize trade. And in exchange, Putin would give them the rest of Ukraine back to whoever they give them to. But Biden created a situation today to make that less likely. So I think the Ukraine problem, A, could have been avoided. B, wasn't necessary. C, I don't understand to this day why they had to go into NATO. Nobody was causing any problem at the moment. The Mideast is a bigger problem. If Biden was not going to give weapons to Israel for any reason, why would you announce it on television? If you have an ally that's you're supporting weapons and you don't want to give them weapons, tell them.
Yeah, don't say it publicly.
Why would you let the enemy know that you're going to limit your own ally? So that was it's politically and militarily ignorant. the position they're taking today on a number of issues with Hamas and Hezbollah, to me, gives them reasons not to not to settle. The only reason they may settle is because they know Trump is coming. So I'm a registered Democrat my whole life. Israel is a very important issue to me.
As is it to me.
There is no question that the messaging sent from Washington, although they may be supportive of Israel, and they are, is not a smart message to help Israel from the Biden administration. Saudi Arabia is a critical key, being a Sunni nation, especially with the development of Wahhabi Sunnis, which nobody pays attention to, which is the army of God created by Saudi Arabia. But the Saudi Arabians know that the Shias are a problem for them. If they kill a reporter and we decide to go after them for that, what's the value if we lose them as an ally, which is the key to settling the entire Middle East ultimately? So I'm not saying what they do is right or wrong, but you have to weigh, in the scheme of things, what has the greater and the lesser value. To me, the greater value is to be closer to the Saudis. So we need them whether we like them or not is irrelevant. We've created an alliance between Russia and China, which is going to hit us in the head through a policy called One Belt, One Road, where they're interconnecting all the cities in Russia with all the cities in China through railway systems that are going now into Europe. The development of the islands in the South China Sea to develop territorial water in the South China Sea is a prelude to the taking of Taiwan. So I don't think that our foreign policy has been very effective currently. I think the United States is in a bad situation, and clearly we're the food basket of the world, but the world's going to run short of food any which way.
Yeah.
And our climate change situation is affecting our production of lots of our food supply. So I think that I wish the Democratic Party, as a Democrat, was the one that was coming up with solutions. And I don't see arguing for men to go into women's sports as a solution.
No.
I don't understand that either. There's a lot of things I don't understand these days, and that's one of them. I don't
see, of censoring comedians because you don't like their jokes, or boycotting someone because they support the wrong as a way to solve the problem. I see a way to solve the problem is to have a tough position on the international stage. This administration coming in wants everything to go back to the states. There's an argument for it. There's an argument against it. Their argument is based on the 10th Amendment to the Constitution, that which isn't enumerated in the Constitution deserves to be in the state. I actually think that's the way this country should have been. It's too federally centralized on too many levels. And I'm pro-life. I'm not pro-life at all. I'm pro-choice completely. And the pro-life position that came up in the overturning of what was established law, Roe versus Wade may belong on the state level, the concept, but it was established law for enough years, like any other thing in the Constitution that changed through established law, including the value of human beings, including the right to vote. So I supported Roe versus Wade, not because I don't believe in states' rights, to be clear, I do, but because I thought the established law trumped it in this particular case. But at least I understand their argument wasn't anti-abortion everywhere. It was a states' right issue.
Just a state issue versus a federal issue.
But I didn't hate either party. I don't hate the result. What I do is I'm playing cards. They're dealing me a hand, and I live in a country where you play the hand you get dealt.
Exactly.
Some of these people live in a country where if you don't like the hand, what you do is you blow up the deck.
Or as Kenny Rogers always says, you got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away, know when to run.
Another guy named Rogers is called Will Rogers. And I'll conclude this portion with this. Will Rogers became elected to Congress. And they asked him, now that you're a congressman, is it true that congressmen are all liars, cheats, or thieves? He said it's true, but they represent the voters perfectly.
On that note, Selena, take us home with a rapid fire, and then we want to get a ruling from Judge Janine before we close it out.
I have some good rapid fire. 3 questions. Beyonce or Taylor Swift?
Taylor Swift.
Barack Obama or Michelle Obama?
Michelle Obama.
And your third question.
Third question, orange or purple?
Purple.
I just want to thank all of our listeners. This is episode number 2, and we've gotten such a great response from all of the folks that have been following us for years. And all we ask you to do is subscribe, like, and comment, and please leave us a 5-star review. Thank you all, and thank you so much, Prince of Palm Beach County, Dr. Andre Fladell.
Thank you so much, Prince. It's always great to have you. I always learn so much with you here, and I love having lunch with you because I just pick your brain. And you're probably like, oh my God, please zip it.
As long as you're picking that instead of the egg salad.
My IQ went up about 10 points after the lunch. And again, thank you to all our listeners, and please like, subscribe, and leave us a 5-star review.
Thank you for listening to Attorneys Are Human Too. Remember, give us a 5-star review and follow us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and wherever you get your digital content.